The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Wellington Barracks as Sergeant James Mitchell polished his ceremonial sword for the third time. His red tunic hung perfectly pressed on the wooden hanger, every button gleaming like tiny mirrors. Today was different from any other day in his 15-year career as a grenadier guard. Today, he would stand at attention as Commoner Catherine Middleton became the Duchess of Cambridge. The barracks buzzed with nervous energy as dozens of guards prepared for what would become one of the most watched ceremonies in modern history. Mitchell had served at state functions before, but nothing compared to the magnitude of this royal wedding. 2 billion people would watch their every move, scrutinizing their discipline and precision. "Nerves getting to you, Sergeant?" asked Corporal Davies, adjusting his bearskin hat with practiced ease. The towering black fur cap added nearly 2 feet to his already impressive height, making him appear like a giant from another era. Mitchell shook his head, though his hands trembled slightly as he fastened the ornate belt around his waist. The weight of tradition pressed down on him heavier than his ceremonial uniform. His grandfather had stood guard during Queen Elizabeth's coronation, and his father had served during Princess Diana's wedding. Now it was his turn to witness history. The other guards moved with mechanical precision, each man lost in his own thoughts about the day ahead. Some had wives and daughters who were already camped outside Westminster Abbey, hoping to catch a glimpse of the fairy tale wedding. Others worried about the massive security operation, knowing that any mistake could have devastating consequences. Colonel Harrison entered the preparation room with his usual stern expression. His medals clinked softly as he walked between the rows of guards, inspecting each uniform with eagle eyes. "Gentlemen," his voice boomed across the room, "today we represent 800 years of British military tradition. The world will be watching, but our duty remains the same. We are the Queen's Guard, and we do not falter." Mitchell felt a surge of pride wash over him. Despite the butterflies in his stomach, he knew he was part of something bigger than himself. The red uniform he wore had been worn by countless soldiers before him, each one standing ready to protect the crown with their lives. As the guards filed out toward their transport vehicles, Mitchell caught sight of himself in a mirror. The scarlet tunic with its intricate gold braiding transformed him from an ordinary man into a living symbol of British heritage. His black boots shone like patent leather, and his white belt gleamed against the vibrant red fabric. The journey to Westminster Abbey took them through streets already lined with thousands of well-wishers. Union Jack flags fluttered from every window, and camera crews had positioned themselves at strategic points along the route. Children pressed their faces against car windows, waving excitedly at the convoy of military vehicles. Mitchell remembered reading about Catherine Middleton in the newspapers, a middle-class girl from Berkshire who had captured the heart of the future king. Some called it a modern Cinderella story. Others worried about a commoner joining the royal family. But as a soldier, Mitchell respected strength of character above all else, and from what he had observed, this young woman possessed it in abundance. The guards arrived at Westminster Abbey 3 hours before the ceremony would begin. The ancient stones of the Gothic cathedral seemed to whisper stories of coronations, royal weddings, and state funerals that had taken place within its walls for nearly 1,000 years. Today, those walls would witness another chapter in the ongoing story of the British monarchy. As Mitchell took his assigned position near the Great West Door, he could see wedding guests already beginning to arrive. Prime ministers, celebrities, and foreign dignitaries stepped from luxury cars, their formal attire creating a river of elegant colors against the gray stone backdrop. Security personnel moved like shadows, their trained eyes constantly scanning for potential threats. The atmosphere inside the abbey was electric with anticipation. Flower arrangements of white and green created natural archways throughout the nave, while camera operators made final adjustments to equipment that would broadcast every moment to viewers around the globe. The organ played softly in the background, its deep tones reverberating through the cavernous space. Mitchell stood perfectly still, his rifle held at the present arms position. His face remained expressionless despite the excitement building around him. This was what he had trained for, the ability to remain composed and alert regardless of circumstances. Yet beneath his professional exterior, he couldn't help but feel moved by the significance of what was about to unfold. Young girls in the gathering crowd wore plastic tiaras and waved miniature British flags. Their mothers dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs, already emotional before the bride had even arrived. Mitchell had seen this kind of public outpouring before, but never quite like this. There was something special about Catherine Middleton that had captured the nation's imagination in ways that surprised even seasoned royal watchers. The clock tower of Big Ben chimed in the distance, marking another hour closer to the moment when everything would change. For Catherine, for William, for the monarchy, and for all the people gathered to witness this historic day. Mitchell tightened his grip on his rifle and prepared himself for the ceremony that would transform a commoner into a princess before his very eyes. The sound of cheering crowds grew louder as the morning progressed, creating a constant hum that seemed to make the very stones of Westminster Abbey vibrate with excitement. Sergeant Mitchell watched from his position as television crews made final adjustments to their cameras, knowing that in a few short hours, the images they captured would be seen by people in every corner of the world. Corporal Davies stood ramrod straight beside the ancient pillars, his bearskin hat casting a shadow over his eyes. He had been selected for this duty based on his impeccable record and unwavering discipline, but even he felt the weight of the moment pressing down on his shoulders. The royal family had trusted them with the security of this most sacred ceremony, and failure was not an option. Inside the abbey, guests continued to arrive in waves of color and pageantry. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair walked past the guards with his wife Cherie, both of them nodding respectfully to the soldiers. Soccer star David Beckham followed close behind, his morning suit perfectly tailored, accompanied by his wife Victoria in an elegant navy dress that had probably cost more than most people earned in a year. The international guest list read like a who's who of global power and influence. Crown Prince Frederick of Denmark exchanged pleasantries with the Swedish royal family, while members of various Commonwealth governments took their assigned seats in the nave. Each arrival was carefully choreographed, with protocol officers ensuring that every person knew exactly where to sit and when to stand. Mitchell had studied the guest list during their briefings, but seeing these world leaders in person was still impressive. The Prime Minister of Canada chatted quietly with the President of South Africa, while representatives from dozens of other nations created a tapestry of diplomatic relationships that would be strengthened by their presence at this celebration. Young Prince Harry arrived with his father, Prince Charles, both men wearing the dress uniform of the household cavalry. Harry's nervous energy was visible even from a distance, his hands occasionally adjusting his sword belt or touching his ceremonial hat. As the best man, he carried the enormous responsibility of ensuring his brother's wedding day went smoothly. The Queen herself appeared in a bright yellow ensemble that seemed to bring sunshine into the ancient cathedral. Her Majesty moved with the grace and dignity that came from decades of public service, acknowledging the guards with a subtle nod that spoke volumes about her appreciation for their dedication. Prince Philip walked beside her, his naval uniform a reminder of his own years of service to crown and country. Behind the scenes, security personnel communicated through nearly invisible earpieces, coordinating a protection operation that involved hundreds of officers from multiple agencies. Mitchell could see some of them positioned strategically throughout the abbey, their civilian clothes unable to completely disguise their military bearing and constant vigilance. The flower arrangements had been completed overnight by an army of florists who had transformed the Gothic interior into a garden of white roses, Lily of the Valley and Sweet William. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present, Sweet William for the groom and Lily of the Valley, which had been featured in the Queen Mother's wedding bouquet decades earlier. Outside, the crowds had grown to enormous proportions. Thousands of people lined the processional route, many having camped overnight to secure the best viewing positions. Street vendors sold commemorative items while mounted police officers kept careful watch over the celebrating masses. The mood was festive but respectful, with Union Jack bunting stretched between lampposts creating a patriotic canopy over the ancient streets. Mitchell could hear the distant sound of military bands rehearsing their music one final time. The precision required for a royal wedding ceremony demanded that every note be perfect, every step in perfect synchronization. Musicians from the Central Band of the Royal Air Force, the Band of the Welsh Guards, and the London Chamber Orchestra had been practicing for months to ensure their performance would be worthy of the occasion. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, arrived in his ceremonial robes, carrying himself with the dignity befitting his role as the spiritual leader who would unite William and Catherine in marriage. His presence reminded everyone that beyond the pomp and pageantry, this was fundamentally a sacred ceremony about love and commitment between two people who had chosen to spend their lives together. Television. Commentators positioned outside the abbey provided running commentary for viewers around the world, their voices mixing with the crowd noise to create a soundtrack of anticipation. Every arriving guest was identified and their significance explained, turning the pre-ceremony arrivals into a masterclass in British aristocracy and international diplomacy. As the appointed hour approached, Mitchell noticed a change in the atmosphere around him. The casual conversations between guests grew quieter, replaced by an almost electric tension that seemed to charge the very air inside the cathedral. Photographers checked their equipment one final time, knowing that the images they captured would become part of history. The moment everyone had been waiting for was almost upon them. Soon, a young woman from a middle-class family would walk down the aisle of Westminster Abbey to marry the future King of England, and Mitchell would have a front-row seat to witness the transformation of Catherine Middleton into Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge. The distant rumble of horse hooves on cobblestone announced the approach of the royal procession, sending ripples of excitement through the crowd gathered outside Westminster Abbey. Sergeant Mitchell felt his pulse quicken despite his years of training to remain calm under pressure. Through the great doors of the cathedral, he could see the sea of faces turning toward the entrance, every person straining to catch the first glimpse of the bride who would soon become part of the royal family. Prince William had arrived earlier, with his brother Harry, both men resplendent in their red military uniforms. The future king stood at the altar with his hands clasped behind his back, occasionally glancing toward the entrance where his bride would soon appear. His nervous energy was barely contained beneath his composed exterior, and Mitchell found himself silently hoping that everything would proceed without incident. The Queen's household cavalry could be heard approaching in perfect formation, their horses' hooves creating a rhythmic percussion against the ancient streets of London. These elite soldiers had been preparing for months, ensuring that every aspect of the ceremonial escort would be executed with flawless precision. The sound grew louder as they drew closer, accompanied by the cheers of thousands of spectators lining the processional route. Inside the abbey, the congregation of nearly 2,000 guests sat in expectant silence. Heads of state, celebrities, diplomats, and members of the extended royal family filled every available seat in the Gothic cathedral. The morning light streaming through the stained glass windows created a kaleidoscope of colors across the stone floor, adding to the magical atmosphere that seemed to envelope the entire ceremony. Mitchell could see the camera crews making final adjustments to their equipment, knowing that the images they captured in the next few minutes would be broadcast around the world and preserved for future generations. The pressure on everyone involved was enormous, but the guards had been trained to perform their duties regardless of circumstances or scrutiny. The sound of carriage wheels on stone grew clearer as the bridal party approached Westminster Abbey. Through his peripheral vision, Mitchell could see protocol officers taking their positions, each person knowing exactly what they needed to do to ensure the ceremony proceeded smoothly. Years of planning and preparation had led to this moment, and nothing could be left to chance. Suddenly, the crowd outside erupted in cheers that could be heard clearly inside the cathedral. The bride had arrived. Mitchell felt a surge of adrenaline course through his body as he realized that history was about to unfold before his eyes. He had been present at many state occasions, but nothing had prepared him for the electricity in the air at this moment. The great doors of Westminster Abbey swung open, and sunlight flooded into the ancient nave. The organ began to play the opening notes of the processional hymn, its powerful voice filling every corner of the cathedral with majestic sound. 2,000 people rose to their feet in unison, creating a rustling whisper that seemed to amplify the significance of what was about to happen. Catherine Middleton appeared in the doorway like a vision from a fairy tale. Her wedding dress, created by Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen, was a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace that seemed to glow in the cathedral light. The intricate embroidery featured roses, thistles, daffodils, and shamrocks, representing the 4 nations of the United Kingdom. Her 9-foot train flowed behind her like liquid silk, carried by her sister Pippa and young bridesmaids who walked with careful precision. Mitchell had seen many beautiful women during his years of service, but there was something ethereal about Catherine as she paused at the threshold of Westminster Abbey. The delicate tiara on her head caught the light from the stained glass windows, creating tiny rainbows that danced across her face. Her bouquet, composed of lily of the valley, sweet william, ivy, myrtle, and hyacinth, had been designed to carry deep symbolic meaning for both families. Michael Middleton walked beside his daughter with obvious pride, his mourning suit immaculate, and his bearing dignified despite the enormous pressure of the moment. This ordinary businessman from Berkshire was about to give his daughter's hand to the future King of England, and the magnitude of that responsibility was written clearly across his face. As Catherine began her walk down the aisle, every person in the cathedral seemed to hold their breath. The silence was broken only by the soaring notes of the organ and the soft whisper of silk against stone as her dress moved with each careful step. She walked with grace and confidence, her eyes focused on Prince William, who waited at the altar with barely contained emotion. The congregation remained standing as the bridal procession made its way through the nave, past the tomb of the unknown warrior, and beneath the soaring Gothic arches that had witnessed nearly 1,000 years of British history. Foreign dignitaries, celebrities, and members of the royal family watched in respectful silence as this commoner transformed into a princess. With each step she took toward the altar, Mitchell found himself deeply moved by the ceremony unfolding before him. This was more than just a wedding between two individuals. It was a moment when the monarchy demonstrated its ability to evolve and embrace change while maintaining its essential traditions. Catherine Middleton represented hope for a more modern and accessible royal family, one that could connect with ordinary people while preserving the dignity and ceremony that made the British crown unique. The young bridesmaids followed behind, Catherine with serious concentration, their white dresses creating a beautiful contrast against the ancient stone of the cathedral. Lady Louise Windsor and Margarita Armstrong-Jones carried themselves with the poise expected of young members of the royal family, while Grace Van Cutsem and Eliza Lopes represented the bride's family connections. As the procession reached the altar, Mitchell noticed Prince William's expression transform from nervous anticipation to pure joy. The love between the couple was visible to everyone present, creating an emotional moment that transcended the formal protocol of a state occasion. This was, at its heart, a celebration of two people who had chosen to build a life together. The Archbishop of Canterbury stepped forward with the ancient Book of Common Prayer in his hands, his voice carrying clearly through the cathedral as he began the ceremony that would unite Prince William and Catherine Middleton in marriage. Sergeant Mitchell stood motionless at his post, but his eyes took in every detail of this historic moment that was unfolding. Before the watching world, Michael Middleton placed his daughter's hand in Prince William's with a gesture that carried centuries of tradition. The simple act represented the formal transfer of responsibility from father to husband, though in this case it also symbolized a commoner's daughter joining the most famous family in the world. Catherine's smile was radiant as she looked into William's eyes, her nervousness replaced by obvious joy and love. The congregation listened in reverent silence as Archbishop William spoke the traditional words that had been used in royal weddings for generations. His rich voice filled the Gothic cathedral, mixing with the soft echo that bounced off the ancient stone walls. Every word was carefully enunciated, knowing that millions of people around the world were hanging on every syllable of this sacred ceremony. Prince Harry stood beside his brother with the wedding rings, his earlier nervousness replaced by obvious relief that everything was proceeding according to plan. The young prince had been given the enormous responsibility of ensuring his brother's wedding day was perfect, and so far every element of the ceremony was being executed with flawless precision. From his position near the altar, Mitchell could see the emotion on Queen Elizabeth's face as she watched her grandson marry the woman he loved. Her Majesty had presided over the British monarchy for nearly 60 years, witnessing the evolution of the royal family through times of both triumph and scandal. This wedding represented hope for the future of the crown, a new generation that could carry the institution forward into the 21st century. The vows exchanged between William and Catherine were the same words spoken by countless couples throughout British history, But in this setting, they carried additional weight and significance. When Catherine promised to love, honor, and obey her husband, she was also accepting the responsibility of eventually becoming Queen of England and the Commonwealth realms. The magnitude of that commitment was not lost on anyone present in the cathedral. Prince William's voice was strong and clear as he repeated his vows, his military training evident in his composed bearing, despite the emotional intensity of the moment. When he promised to forsake all others and be faithful to Catherine alone, he was making that commitment not just as a husband, but as a future king whose personal conduct would be scrutinized by millions of subjects around the world. The exchange of rings was perhaps the most moving moment of the ceremony. The simple band of Welsh gold that William placed on Catherine's finger connected her to a tradition that stretched back through generations of royal brides. Catherine's ring contained gold from the same nugget that had provided rings for the Queen Mother, Princess Margaret, and Princess Anne, creating a tangible link between past and future. Mitchell noticed how the light streaming through the stained glass windows seemed to intensify during the most sacred moments of the ceremony, as if the cathedral itself was blessing this union. The ancient stones had witnessed coronations, state funerals, and royal weddings for nearly 1,000 years, but there was something special about this particular ceremony that seemed to resonate through the very foundations of Westminster. Abbey. The choir of Westminster Abbey began to sing with voices that seemed to come from heaven itself. Their harmonies soared through the Gothic arches, creating a soundtrack that elevated the ceremony from a simple wedding to a transcendent spiritual experience. The music had been carefully selected to reflect both tradition and the couple's personal preferences, creating a bridge between the formal requirements of a state occasion and the intimate nature of a marriage ceremony. Foreign dignitaries watched with fascination as this uniquely British ceremony unfolded before them. Many had attended royal weddings in their own countries, but the combination of ancient tradition and modern pageantry that characterized British state occasions was unmatched anywhere in the world. The careful balance between sacred and secular, formal and personal, created a template that other monarchies often tried to emulate but never quite achieved. When Archbishop Williams pronounced William and Catherine husband and wife, the sound of their first kiss as a married couple seemed to echo through the cathedral. The simple gesture represented the completion of their transformation from boyfriend and girlfriend to Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, members of the royal family with responsibilities that would last for the rest of their lives. The signing of the marriage register took place in the chapel of Edward the Confessor, a private moment away from the cameras and crowds that allowed the couple a brief respite from the intense scrutiny of their wedding day. While they completed the legal formalities of their marriage, the congregation remained seated in respectful silence, many dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs as the emotion of the moment overwhelmed them. Mitchell found himself thinking about his own wife and the simple ceremony they had shared in a small country church nearly 20 years earlier. The promises were the same, the commitment identical, but the setting and circumstances could not have been more different. Yet at its heart, every wedding was about the same thing: two people choosing to build a life together based on love and mutual respect. The newlyweds returned to the altar with obvious happiness radiating from their faces. Catherine's transformation was complete. She was no longer Miss Middleton, but Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge. The tiara on her head, the ring on her finger, and the title she now carried represented her acceptance into a family that traced its lineage back over 1,000 years. As the ceremony moved toward its conclusion, Mitchell prepared himself for the processional that would take the royal couple from the cathedral to Buckingham Palace. The crowds outside had been waiting for hours to catch a glimpse of the newlyweds, and their enthusiasm could be heard even through the thick stone walls of Westminster Abbey. The triumphant sound of wedding bells began to ring from the tower of Westminster Abbey, their bronze voices carrying across London and announcing to the city that Prince William and Catherine were now husband and wife. Sergeant Mitchell felt the vibrations through the ancient stone floor as the massive bells celebrated this historic union with music that had marked royal occasions for centuries. The newlywed couple began their procession back down the aisle, their faces glowing with happiness that was infectious to everyone who witnessed it. Catherine's ivory silk dress caught the light streaming through the stained glass windows as she walked, her 9-foot train flowing behind her like liquid moonlight. Prince William, resplendent in his red military uniform, offered his arm to his new wife with obvious pride and joy. From his position near the great doors, Mitchell could see the transformation that had taken place during the ceremony. The nervous young woman who had entered the cathedral as Miss Middleton was now walking out as Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge, carrying herself with a confidence and grace that spoke to her readiness for the role she had accepted. The congregation rose to their feet as the royal couple passed, creating a sea of mourning coats, elegant dresses, and military uniforms that represented the gathering of some of the most powerful and influential people in the world. Prime ministers, presidents, celebrities, and members of various royal families joined in applause that echoed through the Gothic cathedral like thunder. Behind the couple, the wedding party followed in careful formation. Prince Harry walked with Pippa Middleton, both of them beaming with happiness for the newlyweds. The young bridesmaids and page boys maintained their composure despite the excitement surrounding them, their careful steps a testament to the hours of rehearsal that had prepared them for this moment. The Queen followed with Prince Philip, her bright yellow ensemble creating a splash of sunshine against the ancient stone walls. Her Majesty's expression was one of quiet satisfaction, knowing that this wedding represented not just the happiness of her grandson, but also the future stability of the monarchy. The careful selection of Catherine Middleton as William's bride had been vindicated by the public response to their engagement and wedding. As the procession reached the great doors of Westminster Abbey, Mitchell could hear the roar of the crowd outside growing to almost deafening proportions. Thousands of people had gathered along the processional route, many having camped overnight to secure the best viewing positions. Their enthusiasm was palpable, creating an atmosphere of celebration that seemed to energize everyone involved in the ceremony. The doors of the cathedral swung open, and brilliant sunlight flooded into the nave, creating a dramatic backdrop for the royal couple's emergence. Television cameras captured every moment as William and Catherine stepped out onto the stone steps of Westminster Abbey, officially presenting themselves to the world as husband and wife for the first time. The crowd's reaction was overwhelming. Cheers, applause, and shouts of congratulation created a wall of sound that seemed to make the very air vibrate with excitement. Union Jack flags waved from every direction, creating a patriotic canopy over the celebrating masses. Children on their fathers' shoulders waved frantically at the couple, while women in the crowd dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Mitchell watched as the newlyweds paused at the top of the Abbey steps, allowing photographers to capture the official images that would appear on front pages around the world. Catherine's dress spread around her like a silk pool, while her diamond and platinum tiara caught the afternoon light and created tiny rainbows that danced across her face. The horse-drawn carriages waited in perfect formation, their drivers and footmen resplendent in royal livery that had remained unchanged for centuries. The horses themselves seemed to sense the importance of the occasion, standing motionless despite the noise and excitement of the crowd. These magnificent animals had been specially selected and trained for royal occasions, their temperament as important as their appearance. Prince William helped his new wife into the ornate carriage that would carry them through the streets of London to Buckingham Palace. The 1902 state landau had been used for royal weddings and state occasions for over a century, its gold leaf decorations and plush interior representing the grandeur and tradition of the British monarchy. As the carriage began to move, the crowd's cheers reached a crescendo that seemed to shake the very foundations of Westminster Abbey. Mitchell found himself moved by the genuine affection that the British people showed for their royal family, particularly for this young couple who represented hope for the future of the monarchy. The household cavalry formed their escort around the carriage, their scarlet uniforms and gleaming swords creating a moving work of art as they progressed through the streets of London. The precision of their formation was the result of months of preparation and practice, ensuring that every aspect of the ceremonial escort would be worthy of this historic occasion. From inside Westminster Abbey, Mitchell could still hear the sound of the crowd as the procession moved away toward Buckingham Palace. The cathedral, which had been filled with the energy and excitement of 2,000 wedding guests just moments before, now seemed almost peaceful in comparison. The ancient stones seemed to absorb the echoes of the ceremony, adding this royal wedding to the countless other historic moments they had witnessed. The television cameras continued to roll as guests began to emerge from the cathedral, each person eager to share in the celebration that had just concluded. Foreign dignitaries exchanged pleasantries with members of the British government, while celebrities posed for photographs on the Abbey steps. The entire scene had the atmosphere of a grand party, with everyone present understanding that they had witnessed something truly special. Mitchell remained at his post as protocol required, but his thoughts were with the royal couple as they made their way through the cheering crowds toward Buckingham Palace. The young woman who had walked nervously into Westminster Abbey that morning had emerged as a princess, ready to take her place in the long line of royal consorts who had served the British crown throughout its 1,000-year history. The sound of carriage wheels and horse hooves faded into the distance as the royal procession made its way through the streets of London toward Buckingham Palace. Sergeant Mitchell maintained his position at Westminster Abbey, but his imagination followed the newlyweds as they traveled through crowds of celebrating citizens who had gathered to share in this momentous day. Through the radio communications of the security team, Mitchell could hear updates about the procession's progress. The crowds lining the route were estimated to be over 1 million people, all eager to catch a glimpse of the new Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. The enthusiasm was unprecedented, with people of all ages waving flags, throwing confetti, and cheering as the ornate carriage passed by. Inside the cathedral, the remaining guests began to make their way toward the exits, their conversations filled with excitement about the ceremony they had just witnessed. Foreign dignitaries spoke in hushed tones about the pageantry and tradition they had observed, while celebrities and politicians mingled in the aisles, their formal attire creating a colorful tapestry against the ancient Gothic architecture. Prince Charles and Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, paused near the altar where their son had just been married, both of them clearly moved by the emotion of the day. The Prince of Wales had waited his entire life to see William settled with a loving partner, and Catherine's grace and dignity during the ceremony had confirmed his belief that she would be a valuable addition to the royal family. The flower arrangements that had transformed Westminster Abbey into a garden of white roses and lily of the valley would remain in place for several days, allowing visitors to experience some of the beauty that had surrounded the royal wedding. The symbolic flowers carried deep meaning for both families, representing new beginnings, hope, and the promise of happiness that comes with true love. Mitchell could hear the distant sound of military bands playing celebratory music as various regiments marked the occasion throughout London. The Irish Guards, the Welsh Guards, and the Scots Guards all participated in the festivities, their distinctive uniforms and traditions adding to the spectacle that had captured the attention of the entire world. Back at Buckingham Palace, the royal couple was greeting the crowds from the famous balcony, their appearances creating waves of cheering that could be heard across central London. The traditional balcony kiss had become a defining moment of royal weddings, and William and Catherine's embrace was being broadcast live to over 2 billion viewers around the globe. The wedding reception was already underway in the palace's staterooms, where carefully selected guests would celebrate with the royal family in surroundings that represented centuries of British history and tradition. The menu had been planned for months, featuring both traditional British fare and dishes that reflected the couple's personal preferences. Queen Elizabeth was hosting the afternoon reception, her role as sovereign requiring her to ensure that every protocol was observed, while still allowing the celebration to feel warm and personal. Her Majesty had particular experience with royal weddings, having witnessed the marriages of all 4 of her children and several grandchildren over the decades. The wedding cake, created by Fiona Cairns, was a masterpiece of 8 tiers decorated with sugar flowers and intricate icing work that had taken weeks to complete. The fruitcake base honored royal tradition, while the decorative elements reflected both families' heritage and the couple's love of nature and outdoor activities. Mitchell thought about the thousands of police officers and security personnel who had worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of everyone involved in the day's events. The operation had required months of planning and coordination between multiple agencies, all working to protect the royal family and their guests while allowing the public to share in the celebration. The international media coverage was unprecedented, with news organizations from every continent providing live broadcasts and commentary about every aspect of the wedding. Fashion experts analyzed Catherine's dress. Political commentators discussed the symbolism of the ceremony, and royal historians placed the event in the context of previous royal weddings. Children throughout the Commonwealth countries were watching the ceremony in schools and community centers, many of them learning about British history and constitutional monarchy through the excitement of a royal wedding. The educational value of such events could not be understated, as they provided tangible connections to abstract concepts about government and tradition. The economic impact of the royal wedding was enormous, with tourism, souvenir sales, and media coverage generating millions of pounds for the British economy. Hotels throughout London were fully booked. Restaurants were serving special wedding menus, and retailers were selling commemorative items that would become treasured keepsakes for years to come. As the afternoon progressed, Mitchell reflected on the significance of what he had witnessed. The ceremony represented continuity and change in equal measure, honoring ancient traditions while embracing a more modern and accessible approach to monarchy. Catherine Middleton's background as a commoner signaled the royal family's willingness to evolve with the times while maintaining their essential role in British society. The guards who had served at the wedding would carry memories of this day for the rest of their lives, understanding that they had played a small but important role in a historic moment. Their red uniforms and unwavering discipline had provided a backdrop of stability and tradition that allowed the ceremony to unfold with the dignity and grandeur that the occasion deserved. The transformation of Catherine Middleton from a university student to the Duchess of Cambridge represented hope for millions of young people who saw in her story the possibility that dreams could come true. Her grace under pressure and obvious love for Prince William had won the hearts of people around the world, creating a fairy tale that transcended national boundaries and cultural differences. As the sun began to set over London, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that seemed fitting for such a magical day, Sergeant Mitchell finally received permission to stand down from his ceremonial duty at Westminster Abbey. The ancient cathedral, which had been filled with the energy and excitement of a royal wedding just hours before, now stood peaceful in the evening light, its Gothic spires silhouetted against the colorful sky. The last of the wedding guests had departed hours earlier, making their way to various receptions and celebrations throughout the city. The flower arrangements remained in place, their white roses and lily of the valley creating a fragrant reminder of the historic ceremony that had transformed Catherine Middleton into the Duchess of Cambridge before the eyes of the world. Mitchell walked slowly through the empty nave, his footsteps echoing softly off the stone floor as he made his final inspection of the cathedral. The silence was profound after hours of organ music, choral singing, and the murmur of 2,000 guests who had witnessed history unfold within these ancient walls. Every pew had been returned to its proper position, every piece of ceremonial equipment carefully stored away. The other guards were already changing out of their ceremonial uniforms back at Wellington Barracks, their red tunics and bearskin hats being cleaned and prepared for the next state occasion. Each man carried with him memories of a day that would be talked about for generations, understanding that they had been privileged to witness something truly extraordinary. From the radio updates throughout the evening, Mitchell learned that the royal couple had attended 2 receptions at Buckingham Palace, greeting hundreds of guests and family members who had traveled from around the world to celebrate their marriage. The intimate evening reception, hosted by Prince Charles, was continuing into the night with dancing and celebration that reflected the joy of the occasion. The newlyweds had changed into evening wear for the second reception, with Catherine appearing in a stunning white satin evening gown and a diamond necklace that sparkled under the crystal chandeliers of the palace ballroom. Prince William had exchanged his military uniform for formal evening dress, looking every inch the future king as he danced with his new wife. The crowds outside Buckingham Palace had finally begun to disperse as darkness fell over London, though many people remained in the area, reluctant to let go of the magic of the day. Street vendors continued to sell commemorative items while families took photographs in front of the palace gates, creating memories that would be treasured for years to come. Television coverage continued around the clock, with news networks providing analysis and commentary about every aspect of the wedding. Fashion experts dissected Catherine's dress choice, political commentators discussed the implications for the monarchy, and royal historians placed the event in the context of previous royal weddings throughout British history. The international reaction had been overwhelmingly positive, with congratulations pouring in from heads of state, celebrities, and ordinary citizens around the world. Social media platforms were filled with images and comments about the ceremony, creating a global conversation about love, tradition, and the enduring appeal of the British royal family. Mitchell thought about his own family as he prepared to leave Westminster Abbey for the final time that day. His wife and daughter had watched the ceremony on television, sending him text messages throughout the day expressing their pride in his role in such an important event. The guards who served at royal occasions often became minor celebrities in their own communities, representing the link between ordinary citizens and the crown. The transformation of Catherine Middleton had been complete and irreversible. She had entered Westminster Abbey as a commoner and emerged as a member of the royal family, with all the privileges and responsibilities that status entailed. Her journey from a middle-class family in Berkshire to the steps of the throne represented the democratic ideals that modern Britain embraced. As Mitchell finally left the cathedral and walked through the quiet streets of Westminster, he reflected on the significance of what he had witnessed. The royal wedding had demonstrated the monarchy's ability to evolve and adapt while maintaining its essential traditions and dignity. The careful balance between ancient ceremony and modern sensibility had created a celebration that honored the past while embracing the future. The red uniform he had worn that day connected him to generations of soldiers who had served the crown with honor and distinction. From medieval knights to modern guardsmen, the tradition of military service to the royal family represented continuity and stability in an ever-changing world. His small part in the day's ceremonies had been a privilege that he would remember for the rest of his life. The story of Prince William and Catherine's wedding would be told and retold for generations, becoming part of the rich tapestry of British royal history. The guards who had stood silent and motionless throughout the ceremony had provided the backdrop of discipline and tradition that allowed the magic to unfold, their red uniforms a symbol of the stability and continuity that the monarchy represented. In years to come, when William and Catherine were king and queen, historians would look back on this day as a pivotal moment in the evolution of the British royal family. The wedding had shown that the monarchy could embrace change while preserving its essential character, creating a template for constitutional monarchy in the 21st century that other nations would study and admire.